Well, hey, welcome to another episode of Sit Down by the Fire. Today, we actually are interviewing our guitar player who's been on a variety of episodes. But just so you guys get to know, a lot of people don't know your YouTube name, so why don't you just say it?
Oh yeah, my YouTube is Total Meltdown 2.
Yeah, you guys seen him lurking at the chat, and everything. But guess I'll just ask my questions here. You know, I guess the heavy metal killed Eric. Eric, are you still with us? Did the heavy metal kill you again?
I'm here. Maybe it's just.
Okay. Well, maybe he'll come back.
He got
this is gonna be an interesting episode.
But yeah, I just now finally saw my Wi-Fi signal came back on my phone. So I was having internet issues, but now I guess it just decided it wanted to work now. So
do you need to like flip off your monitor or anything, or you think you're good?
I think I'm good. But yeah, as long as you guys can hear me and as long as you can see me.
But I think we're good there.
Okay, then that's all that matters.
So, I guess talk about some of your favorite movies.
Some of my favorite movies?
Yeah, you.
Well, I love Army of Darkness. That's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just like a throwback movie, swashbuckling adventure. It's easy to watch. It's light on the horror, but I love it. I grew up with the movie, and it's extremely quotable.
That it is, yes.
Yes.
I think it's Bruce Campbell's best performance out of all the Evil Dead movies. And, yeah, I just love that movie. 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually remember that was the first Evil Dead movie that I ever saw. I saw it back when I was a kid. I remember that the Sci-Fi Channel, played it on TV once, and I'll never forget just how entertained I was. I loved all of the one-liners. I loved Bruce Campbell's character. I loved Ash. And then that pretty much was like my introduction to Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and the Evil Dead franchise. And then after I saw the movie, I then did research and I found out that it actually was a part 3. And I was like, whoa, there are other movies in, like that are part of this series.
Yeah. Well, technically 4 if you count Within the Woods, but nobody really counts. But unless people are blind, obviously you play guitar.
Yeah.
But they can hear it. What are some musicians and maybe people that have inspired your playing? Because he's pretty good. He's a very good guitar player, and it's been nice. It's been nice having you avoid the awkward StreamYard delay.
Yeah.
To have you on. So, and in like that first 12 seconds, and so we just have you play. So, what are some musicians that inspired you?
It's hard to pick a specific one because there's been a lot. I said Megadeth, Marty Friedman. That's a big influence. I started off playing stuff like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and then I started getting into the heavier stuff. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
So I guess Tony Iommi, so people like that, Marty Friedman, Angus Young. Yeah, it's hard to recall all of them because there's so many. But you know what I mean?
Oh, there's so many great guitar
Yeah.
players. It's like there's so many great directors and great movies out there. You have also said you're inspired by video game music as well. So
Oh yeah, I mean, the Mega Man games. Half of the reason why I even played those was because the music. It's phenomenal.
oh yeah, well even the 1989 video game Batman. That's some of the best music ever for video games. You know.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
And
Definitely. And of course, I'm saying this because I'm biased. Even a lot of the Sonic video games have some of the best music in video games I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, that's one of the things that made me a fan. Just simply just hearing that Green Hill Zone theme in the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, it perfectly captures the atmosphere of the level and that happy-go-lucky feel to it.
Right. And I will actually, I might get crap for this one, but I think that a lot of video game composers now have gotten to be better composers than a lot of movie composers out there right now.
Yeah.
Because what was the last really good, memorable score that you hear in a movie now? And let's say in the past 15 years.
Yeah, not many. I can't think of much.
Yeah, because especially for me, because think about it. But then Skyrim came out 11 years ago, something like that. Was it 2004 or 13 years ago? Was it 2011?
I'm pretty sure it was 2011.
Yeah.
Okay, so that 13 years ago, and people still notice that musical score.
Yeah.
And that is some of the best. That is a film score. If you, and one of my favorite guys, he does music for. I can't pronounce his name because he's Polish, but it's Marcin. He does musical scores for The Witcher games. And I swear that guy sounds like my favorite film composer of all time, Ennio Morricone.
Wow.
So I guess because Junebug mentioned his favorite film composer, who are your personal top film composers?
Well, one that comes to mind is Basil Polidorus, because he's RoboCop and
Conan.
Quigley Down Under, which is an epic score. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, and Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer.
Uh-huh.
He's great. Trying to think of more. It's hard to think of them.
John Williams.
Yeah, John Williams, obviously.
Of course, definitely. I also would say that Hans Zimmer is a really good film composer too.
Oh, yeah.
And I say that it's no wonder why that he's been doing so many movies as of recent years.
I would say that Hans Zimmer is good, Hans Zimmer is good, but he has done. I have to give, I have to be a bit of a critic here. Sometimes Hans Zimmer, I do feel that sometimes, he has that attitude that everybody has sometimes. Hey, I'm getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
Because when Hans Zimmer is good, Hans Zimmer is good. But then there's some of the scores okay, well,
Danny
Elfman.
did that for a paycheck.
Yeah, Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman's another one of that example, but one of my favorites is Max Steiner. King Kong. And,
Oh yeah.
is this something that's my question, I think that music is people underestimate, I think, music a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit now in film score and even films in general, because I mean, there's a reason why, if I do da 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 da, are automatically know what I'm doing. So, or
Yeah, I'd like to bring up. You were talking about scores, like good scores in the past 10 years or so. I would say you've heard of the movie The Good Dinosaur, Pixar
Yep.
movie.
yeah,
That has an amazing score. One of the best scores I've heard for the last 10 years.
okay, it's been a
That it does.
it's been a while since I've seen that movie. It's the one where they treated dinosaurs like the T-Rex like horses or something, and they had Sam Elliott.
Well, it's more like the dinosaurs are the intelligent ones. The humans are more like savages.
Yeah, I don't know since I've seen that one, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the one, well, like where they animate the dinosaurs like that. They look all cartoony, but the backgrounds look like super realistic.
yeah.
I finally saw that one a few years ago, and you can say what you want about the movie itself, but I definitely do agree. I thought that the score was amazing. I won't go as far as saying that it's the best score I've ever heard. I guess that's really subjective as to what is the best score, but yeah, I mean, crazy to imagine that movie came out in 2015, and 2015 was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. That movie's pretty much been forgotten. It came out, it got trashed, bombed, and no one really talks about it, which is a shame.
Yeah, I actually need to rewatch that one. I remember seeing it. So, but so, I mean, we all know each other through Rambo, Ralph, Zero Cool, OCP, and Fabio especially. But when did you first discover them?
Well, I first discovered Rainbow Raft when I just got done watching the Chris Farley movie Almost Heroes, and for some reason, and I like that movie a lot.
Me too.
Yeah, but that's kind of been forgotten, and I was wondering, like, I wonder what people were saying about this movie. Are there anybody who likes it? And you just happen to have a review up for it, and I found it. So, who's this? This guy. His setup is very crude, but what he has to say is pretty interesting. So that's how I kind of got hooked on his channel.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, though, you just can't. You have to admit, like, whatever he has to say about a movie, it holds your attention. So that's why.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I also especially like his over-the-top rants.
Oh yeah.
I do know that he has gained a reputation for that. I mean, agree or disagree with his over-the-top rants, but his over-the-top rants are hilarious. Like, especially when he ranted on The Dark Knight Rises. And then what I love about his rants is that he'll change the name of the movie around. Like with Dark Knight Rises, he will call it The Dark Knight Pisses.
Yes.
Or with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, like he'll call it Winnie the Pooh, Bag of Money. And even his rant on Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, I will never forget how hard I was laughing when he called Scout Taylor Compton Scout straight out of Compton.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was laughing so hard at that.
From now on, I always call Paul W.S. Anderson Paul Wild Stallion Anderson because of him.
Yeah.
not call him Paul Wild Stallion Anderson.
And what I like about Rambo Ralph is, I mean, he's basically has proven that, him, OCP, Retro Scotty, Zero Cool, and I'd even throw a guy who we've interviewed, the movie reviewer next door.
Yeah.
They are the last true movie critics because they're not afraid to state their opinion. Unlike a certain individual on YouTube. But they are not afraid like, hey, I thought this movie sucked. Like, I know that Matt and Mike and Efrey, they had the three crazy guys, but I would love to see those guys, start a podcast together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now, three crazy guys, I would probably sit there and just because crazy has some, it's not the most marketable. I would probably change the name, but like if you just call it, like something like Stooges or something, the Stooges review movies or something, the Stooges review or something like that. Can't use three because or you could do like the Tri Stooges or something like that. But those guys should start a podcast together. And even Fabio, how did you discover Fabio?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember specifically. It was probably through Rainbow Raft.
Yeah.
But I can't remember specifically though.
Yeah, and I do love that movie, Almost Heroes, but there is one sad thing about that movie. Besides being one of Chris Farley's last movies, that is the only good Lewis and Clark movie.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah,
and
for it.
Yes, because by the way, here's my review of the Lewis and Clark movie from the 1950s. Don't watch it. It sucks. It sucks. It is called The Blue Horizon. It is miscasted. They have Charlton Heston as Clark, which is very good casting. Then they have Fred McMurray as Lewis, which is just okay, kinda. And then they have Donna Reed as Sakaka Joia. Now obviously they had to use what they had to use to make herself look Indian, but it's just one of those things that it's not even acting at this point. It's like, I'm not even going to call that out because you know what? I understand, name a Native American actress at that time that could have done it.
Yeah.
But this one is just painfully obvious. Like, oh my gosh.
I'll tell you one who wasn't obvious is, you seen the movie Remo Williams?
Yeah.
I only found out till recently that was not a Korean guy playing Gun.
Yeah.
It was actually a Jewish guy.
It's acting, it's acting, but look, if somebody found that racist or something, I can understand that. I'm not going to defend somebody, but when it's painfully obvious, it's like,
oh, just one more thing. We'll get back on the subject, but I want to mention about Almost Heroes. You ever notice that at the end of the movie, Bokeem Woodbine just completely disappears? Disappears.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. Like, did something personal happen or what? Like,
I don't know. Maybe.
Also, you wouldn't be able to get away with that movie now because he's literally a slave in the movie, right? Like, he's a slave, and it's kind of played as a joke. So you would never be able to do that.
Oh,
yeah. Well, definitely, yeah. And when I watched the documentary about Boris Karloff, like on Tubi, it's a more recent one. In the documentary, they're talking about a very politically incorrect role that Boris Karloff played years ago, which they definitely never would do now. It's where he plays, like, I believe, like a Chinese man or something like that.
Too.
Yeah, that one. And that's something that they never could do now. Because if they did that now, they would get canceled over it. Boris Karloff would be canceled over it.
There's one problem with that.
What?
Boris Karloff is part Asian.
Oh, I had no idea that he's part.
Yeah. One of his parents was Indian. Now, yes, not from China, and I'm not saying that they're the same country. So people who want to type in the comments, listen. But he is part Asian, so therefore it's like, and if you actually look at Boris Karloff, Eric, now that I kind of mention it, you can kind of see it a little bit that he is part Asian a little bit. So,
now you mention it, and the more I think about it, yeah.
So it's like when I saw that, I'm like, you guys are. I'm not saying the people that made the documentary are idiots, but do your research.
Yeah.
You know, he his so yeah. That's when I was like, you guys do realize that he was part Asian. You know, so I mean, and so yeah. But the but that is one thing that I would love to see. It's something I would love to do with Junebug Films is make a good Lewis and Clark movie. As a matter of fact, when I was even doing research on it, I told Eric about a rock in Montana because Lewis and Clark went through Montana. And Eric, do you remember what they named the rock?
I do not.
Well, they named it Cock Rock because because Lewis and Clark thought it looked like.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, man, Lewis and Clark must have a sense of humor, you know.
I have to bring up, since we're on the subject of race swapping in movies, one of the best examples of that was Fisher Stevens from Short Circuit, because he, in the first movie they kind of play up the stereotypes, but by the second movie he really is playing a respectful representation of an Indian person, convincing too.
Yeah.
And to me, my personal opinion, I think the second one is far superior to the first one. Far superior.
Yeah.
In the characters and the ending, everything. But the first one's not bad, but the second one I prefer a lot more.
Yeah, well, the second one's very underrated. It is weird because the Ben has a different name in the and like, is this what is this supposed to be? You know, and everything, but I guess here's a question. What's the movie that everybody else seems to hate, but you think is good?
I'm gonna have to think about that. Well, there's a few. I mean, I love that movie Bushwhack with Daniel Stern. I don't think a lot of people love that movie.
I like it.
Because I love it when he's with the kids and they say, "Hey, you brought a pack spider?" And he goes, "Yeah, I brought 2." And he brings out the cigarettes. There's a lot of funny stuff in that movie, you know.
What I love about that movie is Daniel Stern is basically playing Marv.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
that's fun.
Like I kind of think that has to be like maybe Marv just trying to distance himself from Harry or something.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, I quite enjoy. I do. So no, I quite enjoy that movie. Can you think of any others, maybe?
That everyone hates. That can just be like I absolutely love it, or do I just enjoy it?
Both if you want.
Well, I actually like Highlander 2. I do like that.
I like Highlander 2.
The Renegade cut, not the theatrical cut, but the Renegade cut is really good.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what I would love to see? Although I can't imagine how much this box top, the set would cost, but I want to see, one of those sites, Kino Lorber, Vinegar Syndrome, Shop Factory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What I would love to see is someone release the Highlander set, but you have all the Highlander movies plus all the cuts.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All the TV shows, including the animated ones and everything, and just have it all in one set. Like, that would be an expensive set, but people would buy that.
Yeah, and the Renegade cut, it does fix the continuity, adds the extra scenes and stuff, but the one thing that it doesn't quite fix is the plot. They try to fix it, but it ends up kind of not making much sense anyway.
Well, I don't know. Highlander 2, I know it's controversial for Highlander fans, but like I was all right with them being from planet, what was it?
Zeiss, yeah.
I was okay with that because, I don't know, like maybe Zeist is like a distant Earth or something,
Yeah, also the flashbacks in Planet Zeiss looked like it was Dune or something. Like they were trying to copy Dune, and I mean, that looked like it would have been a fun movie to watch into itself. The whole flashback.
Yeah, so we need to get, so basically what you want to see, somebody needs to make Zeist.
Yes, the prequel.
Yeah, well, no. The question is Zeist even trademarked? So somebody just needs to make that Zeist and like this sprawling series.
Because the distant past thing makes less sense than being from another planet. I mean, I understand why people hate that, but I don't know why. For some reason, it didn't rub me the wrong way like other people.
Because getting back to Highlander, there's like how many cuts though of the first one? There's like 2 cuts of the first one, right?
Oh yeah, there's definitely quite a bit, and I mean, heck, even for the first movie I made, there's so many cuts.
Yeah.
And as far as movies that I love that a lot of people hate, but yeah, you know what I mean. The only one that I can think of, if I were to answer it, was that shark movie I ate, where those 2 girls are like stuck in a cage at the bottom of the ocean. They're trying to survive from the sharks.
Like 18 meters down or something.
Yeah, I believe it's called 47 meters down.
Yeah, 47.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember I saw that at the theater, and I loved it. But I will admit, I thought that the ending was lame. It was a cop out. But besides that, I loved the movie. And I was surprised to see that it did not get that great of reviews.
But they made a sequel.
And they made a sequel, which I have not seen. And now that one I heard was extremely bad.
I liked it. I mean, Steen Stallone is in it, so there you go. She's Sistine does have a future in acting. I wish she would get back into movies. And I think that as far as Stallone's other daughter, Scarlett, who's getting into acting, she does have a future as well. But she kind of comes off as very, like, this is going to sound like I'm talking. She tries to act like, you can tell personality, she's more shy, but she tries to come off as the tough girl, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And speaking of Stallone and his daughters, though, I mean, I've been liking Sophia more because Sophia seems really down to earth and just like cool, like the type of girl that I would want to date. So, and she's writing a book right now. So, Eric, if when that book comes out, I guess eventually when it comes out, we'll review it on Sit Down by the Fire, assuming for the audio version, right?
Yeah, I have serious ADHD, and it's really hard for me to sit down and read through an entire book. So if I have an audiobook version, it would make it easier on my end.
So just to stress to people, you can read. You just have trouble.
Yes. And now to make myself extremely clear, I do know how to read, but it's just really hard for me to sit down.
Yeah.
And,
I understand. Yeah, I kind of have a similar problem.
I have a similar problem as well, where for me, I can't really read out loud. But if you ask me to read a book by myself, I can go through it pretty fast. But reading out loud is very difficult. Like basically, if I was ever doing story time with some kids or something, if I was a teacher, I would suck at that. So because it would just be one.
Before we change the subject, I wanted to name a couple more movies that I think the people hate that I love. Escape from LA, really like that movie. Yeah. I know it's like it's too similar to the first one to a lot of people, but I really enjoyed that one, like almost as much, probably just as much as the original. Then
I have only seen the original movie, so I can't comment on Escape from LA. But from what I heard, there were talks of a third movie. It was going to be called Escape from Earth. But from what I heard, turned it into some other movie instead.
Ghost of Mars, I think.
Yeah, Ghost of Mars. Yes, Ghost of Mars.
Which is not a bad movie, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's by no means one of John Carpenter's great.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
But from what I heard, John Carpenter hated making Ghost of Mars, and that got him burnt out on making movies. And then that's why that he did not make movies for the longest time.
Yeah.
and then he worked with Amber Turd.
Oh.
Yeah.
Even John Carpenter said that he hated to work with Amber Turd.
Yeah, well, he called her. He said, well, it was really funny because if you actually know John Carpenter, he never really called her out specifically but he was saying in interviews that his last movie, and this was 2014, so do the math. He said the lead actress was horrible to work with. So
Yeah.
And then once the Johnny Depp thing, John Carpenter just unleashed.
Yeah, probably because at that time that he felt like that he would not get in trouble if he was more honest.
Yeah. And you also know that they were going to do a TV show called Escape from Earth. They were going to turn it into a TV show, and obviously Kurt Russell wasn't going to do it. You know who they were looking at to be Snake Plissken in the TV show?
So I never heard about the TV show. So was it going to be a sequel or a prequel or what?
It was going to be adapted. They thought about turning Escape from Earth into the TV show. Is what I was reading at one point.
Oh, I never heard of that.
You know who they were looking at to play Snake Plissken?
Who?
Kevin Sorbo.
I think that would have worked.
I can see it.
You can see it, yeah.
Yeah, I could.
Oh yeah. So speaking of Escape from New York and all that, I've been hearing talks of a remake for the longest time. Like I heard at one point they were going to get the actor who played the sheriff in The Walking Dead, Andrew Lincoln, I believe his name is. Are they still doing that?
I don't know. They've been talking about that for years. I mean, Wildman Beyond even made a post about it at one point. You know, leave Snake Plissken alone. And I don't know. Like I remember at one point they were talking about Josh. They've been talking about so many actors. Josh Brolin, Gerard Butler at one point, Andrew Lincoln. I mean, now they're talking about Wyatt Russell, and I'm like, Wyatt, just do your own thing. You know, I understand you kind of like. I would say that from what I've seen of Monarch, that was fine, but like Wyatt should just do his own thing as an actor. Like, I don't want these actors, okay, that are the sons of famous people right now. Like, I don't want Scott Eastwood doing anything with Dirty Harry or Man with No Name, or Patrick Schwarzenegger, you know, doing The Terminator. I don't want that. I don't want that. Do your own thing. You're your own person. You're your own actor. You know.
And now to play devil's advocate from a business perspective, I do get it that the franchises like that their parents and grandparents were associated with are big names, so therefore it can make it easier to market. But I also do understand where Junebug's coming from about doing your own thing. So, you know,
it makes sense as a business perspective, but is it going to be right for your career? You know, because like, do you want to form your own path as an actor? Because, you know, what if, I mean, let's just use this as an example. Let's just say Sarah Karloff, okay, you know, decided to be an actress. She doesn't like horror movies. So for her continuing her father's legacy in horror movies would not be a good idea for her career, right?
But at the same time, it's something that I even said in my advice for actors videos, I believe part 3, where there are a lot of actors and even actresses like who do horror movies, like Jamie Lee Curtis, and they've been very vocal that they don't like horror movies. But what I said in that video is that, you know, people can have their opinions about horror movies and every other genre, but ultimately what matters most as an actor or an actress, you get your name out there. And Jamie Lee Curtis has been very vocal about how, even though she doesn't like horror movies, she does respect that they have their place in the world. And if it wasn't for Halloween, Jamie Lee Curtis would have never had a career, which would then meant that she would have never gotten her Oscar.
Yeah. And you know, to that point, it seems like No, it's not all the case all the time, but certain filmmakers they get into horror, they become a success, and then they're kind of pigeonholed into the horror genre, and they don't want to be just horror, but they're just good at doing horror. Successful at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think that James Wan is a really good example. Like where James Wan was pigeonholed like to do horror for the longest time, and then he finally broke away with Fast and the Furious 7.
And Waterman, but yeah.
Yeah, and even John Carpenter, said how he wanted to break away from horror, and then he was saying that vampires was one of the closest things that he had. From what I heard, John Carpenter said that he wanted to do a Western, but then he said that, yeah, vampires may be the closest that I will ever get. Because I do get it from a marketing perspective. It was easier for John to get horror movies done. It's because he made a name with himself with Halloween. But Ghost of Mars, that's more so of like a sci-fi movie, even though it does have a few horror elements, but it's more of like a sci-fi movie. And I mean, heck, at least John Carpenter got to do action like with Escape from New York. So
yeah.
And even vampires. I love the story that James Woods, who he wanted James Woods in the lead, and then they didn't. And then when he heard about the project, James Woods fired his agent because he wanted the role. And it says, oh, well, James is not good for this role. And James was like, well, I've always wanted to play I'm getting tired of playing the bad guy. I want to play the hero. And so.
Yeah. And honestly, the whole thing with being typecast, that's something that that's something that I relate to because I felt typecast to do things that piss me off and only things that piss me off. So I completely understand the feeling of being frustrated, feeling like that you can only do one thing and only that. I completely get it.
Oh yeah. Even we've talked before to Minotaur in the back, rooms. You're basically known as a guitar guy on YouTube, and you've talked about doing other things as well. So,
yeah, one day I would like to post movie reviews or something. I don't know when that's going to happen. It's just kind of on the back burner right now, but that's something I do hope to add to the channel one day.
Yeah, well, that would be awesome, because then you could kind of, I don't know, you could maybe do something like that, where you kind of do something different with your movie reviews. You could kind of record playing guitar a little bit and then do the movie review, and then put the guitar up and then I don't know. One of the things that I do know that a lot of our favorite YouTubers have done that, makes great sense for marketing. They'll go on the Arnold marathon where they review every Arnold movie. One of them that I think that it would be something if somebody did this, because considering he's done however many movies. What I would love to see is somebody do a Jackie Chan marathon.
Oh yeah, well that would be a long marathon.
Yeah,
that would be.
But it would be because he's done how many movies in leading role?
Well, that's the problem with me is I was thinking about doing, and I still want to do it a John Woo tier list with his movies, but it would have to be a certain selection because I'm not really, before the 80s, not really into that. But then there's a certain point, after maybe Mission Impossible 2, I just don't want to watch those movies again to review them. I don't want to watch Blackjack again. I don't want to watch Paycheck again. That's the tough part. I don't want to watch the bad ones. I just want to watch the good ones.
Well, nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody should be watching Blackjack again. I love Dolph Lundgren, but oh my gosh, Eric, in that movie, Dolph Lundgren is scared of the color white.
Interesting, but yeah. So
I love that reaction.
So about the whole leading role thing. So a lot of actors do need to realize this, that, just because you're not getting leading roles right away, it doesn't automatically mean that your career isn't going to go anywhere. Like, case in point, Jenna Ortega, when she first started her acting career, she was just an extra. Like, I believe her first movie where she was an extra in was in Iron Man 3. And then it took her 10 whole years, like for her to finally get leading roles.
Well,
I mean, sorry, but like, think about Charles Bronson. This guy, he did not become an international star till Death Wish, and he was like what, in his 50s, mid 50s when he did that.
53.
Yeah, like 53. Like, he didn't become a huge star till 53. So it's sometimes it will take you a long time, but he was.
There are no. It's just, I don't know who said the quote, but a great man said, "There are no small parts. There's just small actors."
Yeah.
And there's been so many examples of actors that they're called late bloomers for a reason. I mean, Charles Bronson, great example. Morgan Freeman, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi. I mean,
Yeah.
These guys didn't get their breaks until they were in their 50s or 40s, and so if you want to be an actor, just go with it. I mean,
It's kind of like those bands, some of these 80s bands, they played all throughout the 70s, but they're known as an 80s band because they got big in the 80s. And no one.
Scorpions.
Yeah, Scorpions. They were all throughout the 70s, and they got.
60s.
Who?
I think they had their first album in the 60s, didn't they?
Or it's like 69 maybe.
68, something like that.
Yeah, very tail end, but yeah.
But yeah, no, the Scorpions, and hey, their stuff that they did in Germany. My dad recently got a lot of their early albums on vinyl in Germany. Those are great albums, but they just didn't have that mainstream success. I mean, Quiet Riot started out in Japan. They had two albums released in Japan that they did with Randy Rhoads, and those are. I mean, Randy Rhoads. I mean, easily one of your favorite guitar players. Definitely.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because that guy was. I mean, if he would have lived, and people weren't being stupid as he's playing some Randy Rhoads for us.
I'm trying to remember it. Something like that.
Yeah. So, my thing is, if he would have lived and left Ozzy and started his solo band, like, I don't know what even if he called it Rhodes, that Randy Rhoads could have easily been that rival to Eddie Van Halen, and he already was. They had a rivalry, too. So back in the Sunset Strip, not a lot of people know that one.
And speaking of Randy, another influence, I have to admit, I forgot about this one. I don't know why I did. Jake Ely. And by the way, those are all big influences for me. Zach, Jake, and Randy, all three of them.
Oh yeah,
just great. I do sense that Jake, he's kind of. You watch him in interviews, he is kind of pompous, but he is a great guitar player.
He always acts like in interviews like he either if he knows you, he's really funny, but if he doesn't really know you that well, he acts like he's stoned or something.
Yeah. Well, I heard that he struggled with alcohol and stuff. I'm not sure if he's sober now, but yeah, and there was a live performance where I think he was playing Rock and Roll Rebel, and he was just drunk out of his mind.
Well, I think that could explain a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and so is the lead singer, because that whole thing, the lead singer, who he still has as a lead singer, Jakey Lee, I love you. If you happen to ever watch Sit Down by the Fire, first of all, I would love to interview you, but please get a new lead singer.
Yeah.
Your lead singer is not good for Red Dragon Cartel.
No.
He tries too hard to sound like Ozzy. Like Eric, even when you do your Jim Carrey impressions, yes, you're trying to be Jim Carrey, but it's you, not Jim Carrey, right?
I mean, do you think Zach and Zach is a pretty good singer? He kind of does have that Ozzy influence. You can tell sometimes he has that
Right.
Ozzy coming out of his voice, but
He makes it different enough, though.
yeah, it's different enough.
Like,
And I always say that Zach, people underestimate him as a guitar player because when you see him a lot, he plays a lot of the pentatonic stuff and the bluesy stuff all the time. But that guy could play whatever he wants to. He could play jazz, he could play classical, he could play anything. Country.
Yeah.
He's extremely versatile and extremely underrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he's a great guitar player. I think that I don't think that people kind of overestimate him because like when he was first starting out, he was like, I mean, let's face it, when you first saw Zach in the 80s, I mean, he was pretty much a pretty boy.
Oh yeah.
and then you see him now, he's just like this like Viking guy, like
he's jacked.
Yeah. I'm not saying anything here, but may or may not be using steroids because
oh yeah,
he has bubble muscles.
Well, I've seen him work out before. He goes in the gym. He has a beer in his hand. Takes a swig of beer. Starts doing some curls. He's that kind of guy.
There you go. I mean, I know you. So here's a question for you. I know like a lot of guitar players, they swear by the brands that they love. Fender, Charvel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What's your personal favorite brand of guitar that you, or brand you have maybe?
Well, I know this is a Dean, and this is kind of like my brother's guitar, but he's letting we kind of share it. My guitar that I've had since like 2007 is a Schecter Hellraiser, and that has been like the thing that has endured for so long. The Schecter, they really make great guitars. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're they make quality guitars. Yeah.
Is it in a convenient place where you can show our guests?
Yeah. That one is a bit noisier.
If it's too loud, then the guests and
I've been having problems with the guitar lately, so
okay.
Because it's been through so much. I call it Big Red because it's big and it's red.
All right. Well,
but
we can hear. Let's hear something with it. Yeah.
it's pretty beastly.
Oh yeah, it sounds good. I kind of think I like Big Red a little better than White Pearl there.
Yeah, sometimes I go back and forth. When you have two guitars, you're always going back and forth. Like, this solo would be better if I use that guitar. Well, if I do this, that's the way I am. I just keep going back and forth to different guitars. As a guitar player, that's the curse. Is you can't just have one guitar. You gotta have this guitar for this, and because you gotta have a guitar with this bridge so you can tune it but easier. Then you have to have the whammy bar. You should have a guitar for that. You know what I mean? Like it gets pretty complicated.
And you could even, I think with that one, you could definitely try some Jakey Lee style where he sits there with how he uses the whammy bar.
Oh yeah, no, he actually he pushes on the guitar like that. Or sometimes he'll just flat out take the tuning peg and go all the way down, which I'm not going to do right now. But you can make that. He swears by like he said that he has pushed the guitar as hard as he could, and it didn't break. I'm just assuming that the reason why it makes that sound is because there's a rod running through the neck of the guitar, and when you do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It gives a whammy bar type effect, but he was innovative on the guitar. The stuff he was doing was insane.
Well, one of the things that Jake, if you see him in concert, at least in the '80s, the ones that are filmed, he's running all over the stage, and just using the entire guitar. Like,
Oh yeah,
he makes the guitar a workout. So, Eric, do you got anything really you want to ask or?
Have you ever thought about trying to get into the movie industry?
Yeah, I thought about it. I would love to do some acting. I did do some acting at one of our playhouses close to me. We did a To Kill a Mockingbird, and that was a very, very small part. I was like one of the racists in the back, whatever, and I couldn't go too far because the director would be like, "No, we can't do that. You can't do that." So yeah, he's very serious about how we portray everything, and but it's funny. It's a lot of work, for a person who just is a background character. You got to show up, you got to sit there, and while everyone does your stuff, and you don't really have much to do. You just sit there and do your part. It's it was quite an experience, and I'd like to get back into acting. Maybe take some lessons because I enjoy that type of stuff.
Are you obviously being a musician? Have you ever attempted to write any songs?
Yeah, I have attempted, but I can come up with a riff, but I don't know how at this point how to stitch everything together because you have to come up with a riff and then you kind of Frankenstein them all the parts and come up with something. And I have the parts, but I don't have the ability to take it and put them together. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, I think that we just need to find you a band. I mean, because your brother can play guitar. We've seen it on your videos.
Oh yeah, he's great.
And then we just need. So if anybody, I'm gonna have to reach out to the subscribers here. Because you can start a band now through the internet, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's so basically, I would say a drummer and a bass player. And then we need a lead singer for Minotaur, and I've even actually come up with a good name for Minotaur's band here. I thought about calling it Toxic Terror.
Yeah, you told me that. That is a cool name.
After Joe Perry Joe Perry and then Steven Tyler, because they were called the Terror Twins, and then Steve Clark and Phil Collins were called the Terror Twins. So combined it, Toxic Terror. So, and plus, that name could actually get attention now as a band for obvious reasons. But I think that that's something that if anybody hears a drummer, and a bass player and a lead singer, but I guess there's a question I wanted. I guess I can think of another question too here. A lot of some bands have tried to attempt it, and I would argue there's one band that has done it really well. They're called Leatherwolf. They're a triple threat, where they have 3 guitars.
Oh,
A lot of people said that they don't think that can work. Like Iron Maiden, for instance, they don't think it really meshes well. There's a few other bands that have attempted that. What are your thoughts on that? 3 guitars.
3 guitar players. Yeah, I mean, I don't know because I guess if you're like you really need to do those 3-part harmonies or something, you need that third guitarist because you have like 2 guys doing a harmony and then you need a guy doing rhythm. But I mean, in most cases, you're fine without that. And in some cases, when you're a god tier guitar player like Randy or Zach or Jake, you just need one. They're just that good,
Right.
They're the spectacle. But I mean, I'm sure you're probably going to ask, like, what are my favorite guitar duos?
Sure.
Well, I mean, Judas Priest is one. They're a good duo.
Oh yeah, and by the way, it's Joe Perry and Brad Whitford. Yeah. So those, if you're going to comment in the chat,
Oh,
I
yeah.
just remembered. So, I mean, I'll go head after the stream to get my dunce cap.
But yeah, so I am wanting to wrap this up soon, just because I do got some things I got to do. So
Yeah.
Well, what are some final questions you have for Minotaur?
for me, crap, are you a fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise?
Games or
All in all.
what? Oh, you mean everything?
Yeah, like movies, video games, comics.
You know, I tried to get into the games, but I couldn't really. I wasn't very good at them. You know, I was more of a Mario guy. I don't know. I couldn't get into Sonic, but I wish one day that I can get into Sonic. You know, like I got into Lord of the Rings, but maybe one day. It's just when I played that game for Genesis, I was not very good at it.
Well, maybe Eric, now you could just end this by talking about for people who watch Sit Down by the Fire, your Sonic versus Mario story.
Oh my god.
that you've told 300 million times.
Well, I have told you it. I've mentioned it on my channel, but since we're on Junebug's channel, I guess I could say it here. So me and two of my friends at that time, Justin and Brandon, we were all really big Sonic fans in like the 4th grade. Then one day in the 5th grade, Brandon and Justin decided that they didn't like Sonic anymore and they were going to like Mario. I did not like that at that time. And then we got into a really heated argument over who was better, Mario or Sonic. And now look, I get it in retrospective. It was very petty for us to argue about that, but hey, we were just kids. And so me wanting to prove my point, I thought that I would prove my point if I drew a picture of Sonic giving them the middle finger. And then me being young and stupid, I drew Sonic in a way where he didn't even flip them off right. I'm not trying to be vulgar. I'm just trying to show what it was like. Usually whenever people give you the bird, it's like this. But the way how I drew it, Sonic was doing it like this. So instead, Sonic was flipping himself off.
Well, to be fair, this could be like a new little symbol here, right? I mean,
anyways, I was young and stupid, and I put my name on it, and then I put it on their desk, and then the teacher saw it, and then afterwards, my friends had then retaliated by drawing a picture of Mario decapitating Sonic, and then put it on my desk. So all of us got in trouble, but I was the one who got in the most trouble. Like, I got in school suspension, and during PE, I was forced to sit out while everyone else was doing bowling. And I remember everybody at school was giving me the death look, and even the teachers, everybody was giving me that look like they were ashamed of they were all just ashamed of what I did. And so I remember at that time that my mom forced me to give up Sonic. It's because that my mom, look, I get it. She was trying to teach me a lesson, don't argue over petty things. But Sonic was not the root of the issue. The root of the issue was my behavior. And so while I was sitting out in PE, it was really close to Halloween time. Me and my friend Zach at that time, and the PE teacher's kid, because it was close to Halloween, we were talking about the scariest movies that we ever saw, because it made sense. It was close to Halloween. my friend Zach mentioned the movie Halloween. And at that time, I never even heard of Halloween. I was like, whoa, there's a horror movie called Halloween. And I thought that making a horror movie about the holiday Halloween was like the absolute perfect thing to make a horror film about. And Zach was hyping it up to be the scariest movie ever made. And because of how he hyped it up, it got me that much more curious to see the original Halloween. So come Halloween night, 2004, which was, holy crap, this October will mark 20 years ever since all that crap went down. I could not sleep. I turned on the TV and the original Halloween happened to have been on. And I was so curious about it because of Zach. And I thought, man, this movie's not going to be scary. Zach is just a big wuss. But then as soon as I heard the Halloween theme, I instantly was eating my words. I'll never forget the goosebumps that went down my entire body hearing that song. And then ultimately, that's what got me into horror movies, even though I liked the universe of monsters beforehand. But that's what really kicked off my love of horror films. Funny, because my mom didn't realize like that by her making me give up Sonic, it opened up the doors for me to be into horror films. And my parents are not fond of horror films, so yeah. So I do know that Junebug's probably tired of hearing that story by now.
I just find it funny, but just to imagine Sonic flipping himself off. So
yeah, and basically to imagine the whole reason why I'm into horror movies now is all because of a petty argument over who's better, Mario or Sonic, and over a picture of Sonic flipping himself off.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a win, right? So you got you into horror movies.
Yeah.
That is just crazy.
Well, so Eric, you did want to wrap this up, but take us out, Minotaur.